I can see
Okay,
it and my viewers can
you
see it
can
as
see it.
well.
Okay,
Yes,
so
oui, oui, oui,
it's a connect
Montreal.
the dots,
Mm-hmm.
apparently. Um, for question one, so you go one
Aha.
A, two B, three
Three
C,
C.
four D, five E.
Okay.
Okay, and then you draw this bed. So I
Co-
guess that's
copy bed.
copy bib. Draw a clock saying 5 past 10, and then you
Okay.
grade them on how good they draw. I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming that they're looking for like an analog clock, because realistically you could just draw a digital clock, but they probably want, I mean, imply that they want hands, and I guess you would have to do the numbers like in the correct
Mm-hmm.
order and in the correct places. So
I'll be
that's probably
so
also a
honest.
bit of a
Yeah.
memory test,
I was gonna
right?
say
Because you got,
I feel like I am so bad. Like I feel like we've all lost. Like so many of us have lost the ability to read and or draw an analog clock. Like it's honest. That would take me a hot minute.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I haven't. We have an analog clock in our house right now. So hybrid robotics. Hello, welcome
Hello,
in.
welcome in.
I'm front. I don't know what it means. Guys, he got the best score. He's seen the other scores, and
They
they aren't
aren't
as
as good.
good. You're talking about Cheeto Man, I'm sure.
Yes.
So you also have to be able to name a horse, a tiger, and a duck. And you need to be able to read a list of words. The subject must repeat them, or the experimenter reads a list of words, and the subject must repeat them back. And you have to do 2 trials, even if the first is unsuccessful, and then do another recall after 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, these are the words that they suggest. And
Mm.
I mean, I guess it's important to point out, like, though this is kind of like seemingly silly, this has obviously been validated, right? Like, this is a pretty common, popular cognitive ability test, not an intelligence test, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm sure that these words went through like extensive pilot testing to make sure that they weren't too like specific to a
Yeah.
region,
Like very
or
normative. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, so like white being one of the colors that like most cultures have a name for, and tomato being a pretty ubiquitous food, school, like these are like pretty
Mm-hmm.
obvious
Mm-hmm.
things. um, Read the list of digits and repeat them forward and backward. This is interesting to me because the backward digit span test is supposed to be one of the few things. Sorry, I forgot that you guys can see that and I can't see. It's supposed to be one of the few things that highly load onto like what most psychology and neuroscience research believes to be kind of true intelligence, or what we'll discuss later as the G
Yeah.
factor. The backward number span, so your ability to repeat a higher number of digits that were told to you backwards, is very, very highly correlated with generalized intelligence. Tap your hands at each letter. What does this even mean? I'm not sure what that must mean.
The
Oh, at
subject
each letter
must.
A. See, how smart do you have to be able to read the fucking question, Alicia? Um, okay. So it's just recognizing the first letter of the alphabet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is
Um,
like pretty. Yeah, and it's also timed, right? So I think get a grip put in there that they're supposed to last about 10 minutes. So if it takes you significantly longer, and there are some assessments which are like similar to this,
yeah.
that are what's what I'm looking for, um like there so I have some other examples as well, but like that they'll
Hmm.
take bits and pieces. So digit span is a very common like that sort of
Yeah.
recall aspect and like reprocessing of information. But I know, for instance, my cousin was telling me about this where she was getting her mom assessed,
Hmm.
and they ask you just to like, it's like literally what's in your vocabulary. So it'll be like just start naming words with A, and then you start with like most people will be like apple, and then you just like go from there. But then they'll be
Yeah.
like just name animals, and I think most people will
Yeah.
start with like cat and dog because those are very like that's what you first learn, and then maybe some
Hmm.
farm animals. But then her mom said hyena out of nowhere, and she found it very hilarious. But these are
I
like
love that.
you're pulling like that recall aspect is like very relevant in like these like testing mechanisms.
Yeah. Well, and chat here says hybrid robotics says they don't do well on time things. Everyone needs to
Hmm.
get a colonoscopy. And that time things tend to make them panic. And I
Yeah.
think that's actually super common,
Yeah.
frankly. Like test anxiety is like very well established as a thing, and that's
Hmm.
one of the bigger like comments or critiques of intelligence testing is number one, how to what degree are they testing your test taking ability more than they're testing for your actual intelligence, because this was
Yes.
something that hugely blew my mind.
Yeah.
Most intelligence tests fall apart, like their validity and ability to stratify stratify the
Hmm.
individuals that take the test into different categories along a bell curve falls apart if you take away the time limit, because most of the people can get most of the questions
Yeah.
given the amount of time. So a lot of this is like you know how much are you able to do things under duress, and
Yes.
to some degree that has a lot more to do with things that have zero to do with your actual intelligence. So
Well, I was gonna say I do believe test anxiety as a like phenomenon is able to be sussed out in these types of tests. Like neuropsychological testing, also like you can get test anxiety diagnoses from that. Um,
absolutely.
what was I gonna say? Yes. Also, I think there's like it sometimes you have to be able to just also conceptualize what they're asking for, right? So for instance, if it's like a simplistic, oh yeah, like for instance, what is the similarity between a banana and an orange, right? It's like they're looking for something simple, a fruit, as opposed to, oh, they both have like a peel, something complicated, like they both have a peel that you can like take
Yeah.
off, right? And so again, this example from that I thought was very funny from my aunt was that it was the question was like, how do you cross a road safely? And it was like typically
Hmm.
like again, and these are questions that they'll often be asking to children, right? Because there's sort of like some questions that are like used in adults and children to sort of assess
Hmm.
cognitive aptitude. And it's like essentially they're looking for look both ways when we're crossing the street. But it's like,
Yeah.
what do you do if a car's coming? And if the answer just like, I guess I'll just get hit by the car, I'll just die then. Then it's like somebody is not able to
Right.
like process like what is this person also like trying to get me to say, you know what I mean? There's a part of it that is also in play there.
Yeah. It's to the degree to which a lot of concepts of intelligence are really westernized and
Yes.
kind of forcing homogeneity in their answers. Like that's another of the things that I think is a really good critique of this is generalized intelligence and any of the major kind of like components of most common intelligence testing doesn't include creativity. And speaking as two pretty, well established scientists that have
Mm-hmm.
to be creative about, experiments that we come up with
Yeah.
and whatnot, I think that one of the hardest parts of our job is, and the hardest parts of being a truly good scientist is having that creativity and that kind of critical mind for thinking about important interesting questions in elegant and effective ways, and that just frankly is unmeasurable as far as I'm aware, though there are tests of creativity, I believe. But the
Yeah. I
degree
mean,
to which people take that as any indication of intelligence is negligible, I would say.
yeah, I mean, there is like cognitive flexibility assessments, but again, also like true jumping from like point A to point D creativity, I think is definitely like difficult to assess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's why AI can't do it, right? Like we talked about that a little bit in the AI episode,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's some nebulous thing. I don't know where it would be in your
Yeah.
brain. I know that it's definitely like a cortical region, but like, where does creativity come from? Where does inspiration come from? Like maybe we could do an
Yeah.
episode on that at some point. But like it starts to get really philosophical when we start to get into the what is art and what does it
Yeah.
all mean kind of thing, like we've done. most
Yeah.
of the time, frankly, because
I
it all
know.
kind of boils down
I
to that.
I was gonna say we say that this is a science stream, but honestly, again, we get so philosophical sometimes. I'm like, we really like dig
Yeah.
in.
I mean, realistically, psychology is the meeting of science and philosophy. So, I
Yes.
mean, if
Well,
there's nowhere better to do it than right here with two psychology PhDs, right?
I agree. And I mean, psychology started, and I will even comment on this when we get further into the intelligence stuff, but like, psychology started as just like people just like essentially philosophizing. Like, when you learn about the history of psychology, it starts with like Aristotle, and you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah. They were like, they knew nothing. And so they were like, if humans know nothing, how do we learn, right? Um,
Right. Just realized it.
no, I'm choosing to watch the stream instead of going back to bed in the middle of the night. Chop, chop. Hi,
Ah,
hi, Muse. Welcome
welcome.
in. Oh my god, it's been so long.
Chop chop, he says. He's like, founder badge up in here. Chop chop, girls. Get to the meat of the meat of the argument. I don't know. We're not arguing. I
Yeah.
always wonder about bird songs such as the morning doves make that warning call that is just like a screen door shutting. I don't know that I've heard that, and there's morning doves around here all the time. A screen door shutting.
I am
Um,
yeah, I'm not familiar.
I mean, mourning doves are one of the most proliferous birds in America for sure. They're like the ones that go. "Ooh, ooh." They said lots of people are like, "Oh, I heard an owl," and it's like, "No, you heard a mourning dove, my girl." But
Drop by
I
more.
dropped in more, but I genuinely am sleeping now since my work starts around 3 a.m. Thank you
Jeez.
so much for being here
Yes.
either way.
We really appreciate you.
Any presence is always appreciated, especially from a long time you know, chatter, you know, an instigator really,
Mhm.
you know, an innovator.
an, an innovator. So one of the things actually I did want to say, so like obviously going back to like the origins of psych and origins of like intelligence
Mm-hmm.
testing specifically. So I am gonna give a disclaimer. I actually TA'd a course, like an entire semester long course
Mm-hmm.
about intelligence, and it was taught by a neuropsychologist. And these are the people that assess people for ADHD, autism, giftedness, etc. Right? And so there was like the historical aspect, there was like the how do we do it like in-house aspect, but one of the things that was really shocking to me is how intelligence testing actually really started. It sprung out of almost like a eugenics movement. Isn't
I don't
that
know that we even need the almost. I think it may have just. Mm,
I mean, like it is like shocking how much people were like, "Oh, this is for like the greater good," and then it was like, just bias after bias after bias being introduced into
yeah.
how. And so like sort of again to add to this disclaimer that, everything we talk about when we talk about intelligence has like, oh, sorry to smack the mic. So much like there's so much cultural relevance that has to be considered, and like socioeconomic status is like the thing that most likely always like has the highest correlation with intelligence. Like if you take
Yeah.
socioeconomic status out and still find a correlation with something with intelligence, that's how you know it's a real phenomenon, because
Right. Yeah.
SES is like the huge driver of that, right? And obviously that also plays
Right.
into your education level as well.
100%. Well, and I think what a lot of we started talking about this in our like pre-stream thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to get into the dry statistics of it all, but the way that the more modern conventions of these kind of psychometric and intelligence testing things are evaluated is with something called factor analysis, which Layla knows. And there's kind of two different ways that you can do it. And one is hierarchical, where you add in a factor each time and see how much more variance in your group. So, say you had a group of 1,000 people and you did a standard intelligence test, and that accounted for, say, 60% of the variance between individuals, just that test. So, that's measuring, various like word processing and numerical abilities and logic and reasoning. And then if you take that, and that accounts for 60% of the variance, and you load in socioeconomic status, and that accounts for a further 30% of the variance, that's how you can determine kind of the proportionality. Those numbers are just made up, by the way, so no one take any of that with any sort of like seriousness. Those were just like numbers. But it's important to do it that way and not to predetermine the thing that you want stuff to fit into, because you can essentially statistically